So I'm here next to the roof of my van to show you a close-up and some more details of my solar system mounting and setup. So I've got 2 of my 3 panels mounted so far. Third one's going to be here, and this is one of the sides of the bracket where it's going to be mounted, and then here's the other bracket. The full setup's going to be 3 250 watt panels. Main reason I chose these panels is because, as you can sort of see, and it's tough to tell, but essentially a few inches past the edge of this rail is the end of the roof, and so I chose these to essentially maximize the space that I have available to me on the roof without necessarily being too aggressive and showing off a little bit too much over the sides, and that way I can have as much power as possible. So with 750 watts, even getting half decent sun, I feel pretty confident that I'll be able to go a long time with the rest of my battery setup and everything else as well, based on some of the estimates I made on my usage. I'll talk more about my electrical system in a future video, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But for this, I'm showing the mounting and some of the details of the solar system itself. Mounting, the panels are mounted to this aluminum strut channel. I custom made brackets for the ends, and I'll show you those here close up more in a second. And then this strut channel was mounted fixed to these vibration damping sandwich mounts that go directly into threaded holes that are structural. This is one of the brackets that I've made for mounting the panels, and this is another style. So I have these 2 main styles of brackets. I have essentially these larger rectangles where I've placed the holes pretty precisely, and these are for mounting in the center where the panels are going to be up against each other. So that way I can have one large bracket to fix multiple panels, giving myself a little bit more structural rigidity. And then at the ends, I have these L-shaped, within a oblong shape, albeit, these L-shaped brackets. Again, fixing the bracket to the strut channel, just like I'm doing here, as you can see here, fixing the bracket to the strut channel using strut nuts, and then fixing the panel to the bracket. So these brackets, they're 16th inch thick aluminum, and then at the ends, for a little bit more rigidity and support when under braking or accelerating, I also put these angled brackets. In this series of videos, you'll see a little of how I made the brackets for my panels. After cutting out all the aluminum for the brackets, I needed to drill and align all the holes in both the brackets and the panels. I started with the brackets, first creating a starter hole, and then verifying my measurements by aligning the bracket to the panel. I then tried to optimize my process by working on a few brackets at once. I would start by drilling a small pilot hole and stepping up in drill bit sizes until I had my 1/4 inch bolt holes. Then, as you can tell in this expertly captured shaky video, I would align the brackets to the panels they would be used for and drill my holes directly into the aluminum frame of each solar panel. Here's another short look of me preparing my solar panels for mounting. So these brackets, both the end brackets and the middle brackets, are all fixed to the strut channel using strut nuts. Here on the top, what you see is a few different things. I've got the stainless steel bolt, stainless steel lock washer, stainless steel washer, and it's tough to tell, but a plastic washer, a nylon washer in between that. And so the reason for that is the brackets are made out of aluminum, and the bolts are out of steel, and the washers as well. And so to prevent any corrosion between the dissimilar metals, using that plastic washer as a separator is going to help the system last long term. In terms of fixing the strut channel to the roof, you can see I've got 4 there and 1 here, so 5 total mounting points alongside each side of the roof for each channel. Now these are vibration damping, corrosion resistant sandwich mounts. So these sandwich mounts, they have essentially a few inches, I believe it's 1 1/4 inch, the ones I got. Details will be in the description, where it's essentially a bolt head on one end, and then it sticks out of the rubber, and then it's the rubber body, and then inside of that rubber body I also have a threaded bolt hole for an M8 bolt. So it's got an M8 bolt that sticks out, a threaded hole for an M8 bolt, and then that's how I fix the channels to the mounts. And then the mounts in each of these spots, I pick them in particular because they are structural, where there's a beam going across on the inside, and in that beam, in these specific points, there is a threaded M8 bolt hole for that ready to go. And you can see what that looks like when it's closed and covered here. So essentially, I used a heat gun to pop those plastic caps and threaded right into those with these sandwich mounts. On the passenger side of my solar setup, I put these eye bolts through the channel before I fix the channel to the roof. I have a handful of them right now. I've got 4, and there's going to be one that's added a little bit later on as well. My whole purpose for this channel, for these eye bolts, and why I did them on the passenger side only, so I have only a door only on my passenger side. So with these bolts, my goal is to be able to fix a tarp or whatever I need, if I so choose later on, using a D-ring or something through these eye bolts. That way I can sort of have an awning and extend the space of my van when I'm parked somewhere and hanging out. So figured it would be a good opportunity to do this now while I was putting the rails up to start with. It would be a lot more difficult to do later on. So yeah, I've got these eye bolts ready to go for whatever I want to fix to the channel later on as a quick on and off attachment. For my cabling, the inside and how it's wired to the rest of my electrical system will be talked about in a separate video. But for getting the wires to the roof and doing it in a waterproof way, I used one of these standard solar glands. Essentially on the underside, it's got a flange, and it's tough to tell based on how I mounted this, but it's got a flange, and on the inside it's hollow. And so I used one of these particular cap holes that does not go into a threaded bolt hole already. That's just open into the inside of the van. I popped the cap. I used a rubber grommet around that metal lip, fed the wires through, and then fixed this gland to the roof with a couple different things. First, I used butyl rubber on the base of the gland to help it stick. Then through the 4 corners, I ran a bolt through the sheet metal, and then I used, similar to my vent fan, Dicor self-leveling lap sealant. Now, this lap sealant, again, levels on its own, also closes all the gaps, and prevents any water from getting in. And as you can tell, I've covered all the screws as well. So should have a really waterproof setup in terms of the mounting to the roof. And then the cables get fed through essentially a water-resistant housing as well, where there's rubber washers, both for the cable that get compressed when this nut is tightened down, as well as between this back nut and the gland itself. So what I'm gonna do when I actually finish mounting the last panel and get the length of my cable set is also use some of the self-leveling lap sealant around these edges as well. Just again, taking some extra precautions, maybe going overboard, but making sure that I've got a waterproof, long-lasting setup. Thanks for sticking around and watching this video and learning a little bit more about my solar setup for my van. I'm gonna go finish this off, but in the meantime, please like, please subscribe, throw me a comment, tell me what you think. More specific details of the materials, as well as a link to my website, which will have more pictures and details as well, are all in the description of the video. So please go check those out. Again, subscribe and stay tuned for more on the rest of my van build. Thanks, and see you soon.